Welcome to another edition of Is It Art? The show that pops up in your browser, interrupts you, and brings you to the very center of the gears of culture and transgression. Today, we're at Gray Area, which is just completing a show on blockchain and distributed art. And I'm with Barry Theroux.
Hey, Peter.
Okay, so this is great because, you know, when Gray Area started about 10 years ago, we were kind of early at this intersection between art and technology, at least in the San Francisco scene. We were looking at data visualization, artists who were working in code, all of which was new back then. Then it became a bit more common. But this, in a way, is new again, asking about blockchain and art. So what questions were you asking here, and how did you go about curating it?
Sure. So this exhibition is in conjunction with our Gray Area Festival, which this will be the 4th year of. And the Gray Area Festival as a whole sort of takes art as a form of knowledge production and to help us get some insight into some of the most complicated technology issues of the day. This exhibition is really about artists dealing with modes of technology control, particularly in economics and blockchain, and new forms of governance, and also free culture and sort of piracy and surveillance. So there are a lot of questions in here around how these new technologies we're developing are going to impact society and maybe help us regain some agency over this sort of oppression that, you know, a lot of people are feeling right now.
So it's kind of a lovely time for art and technology. First of all, there's kind of a national downer mood about technology, right? We're concerned about privacy. We're concerned about the impact the tech industry's had on kind of wealth distribution. There are all of these new challenging things going on with blockchain. So actually, it's something people are paying attention to. And it's often stuff that isn't that understandable. And so in a way, artists come in and they're having our dreams for us. They're working things through, they're asking questions. And it was interesting in putting this exhibition together. So we've done the Gray Area Festival for several years. This year, as you approach sponsors and people get involved, in a way, even people in the industry are asking, hey, what's going on here? Because in a way, you were pushing edges and asking a set of questions and saying there's going to be art about a set of technologies that we hadn't had before.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good artist, to me, takes concepts that are very complex, and this isn't just about technology, and we are dealing with some very bleeding edge, complex, little understood technologies here that we're still working through the meanings of. But a good artist will take a very complex set of issues and make it aesthetically understandable and mediatable, so you can get some sense of the way these things might be affecting everyone through this sort of immediate relationship with a work of art.
And with that preamble, let's tumble in and get aesthetically affected. All right, so let's start over here. What's the name of the group that's done this piece?
This group is called disnovation.org. And all of their works are kind of these commentaries and satires on the rapid pace of technology innovation, and all take different angles into that dialogue.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this piece here is called Predictive Art Bot. And so there's anybody that follows media art and technology, there are a lot of tropes of, you make these pieces that are basically just one-liners about headlines, and they kind of write themselves. And so you can see as this piece runs, it'll pull up some headlines from the news. It's got a news feed that comes in. It identifies keywords, and then will create a prompt for a new art piece directly out of these headlines with some machine learning language AI.
So at a time when we are inundated by content and tweets, and there is a new meme all the time, why should humans have to go do this work when machines can do it? So Predictive Art Bot follows a whole bunch of...
we have sex robot, Pokemon, a sex robot intercepted by Pokemon.
But they follow this starts with a piece of software that follows all sorts of news sources that might create popular memes like Gizmodo, Fox News, and Slate. Then, as it pulls up these sources, it goes and it looks for unique words, keywords in it, out of which to make a piece of art. So in this case, make art and keypad, make art out of a keypad. It's the predictive art bot. Now, instantly, if you don't like that meme, or you don't think it's going to catch on in the world, suddenly you have Super Earth most likely candidate for alien life, make sense for AlterNet, and factoring the noise protocol matrix from Hacker News becomes use alien life to make protocols, which if you follow what's going on in the blockchain world, where the whole value is creating protocols, asking alien life to create protocols gets us out of the whole mining conundrum. That's a completely original idea. Let's see, cold brew coffee makers, experimental feminist prison. Okay, that just went away. Entirely new meme for this second with the Jewish Museum, HP offering a reward for hacking in Bitcoin. Now, anarchist art.
Hacking Bitcoin, which
Now,
is what we have here.
Anarchist art of hacking Bitcoin, which we could have read as Antichrist art of hacking Bitcoin, but it didn't say that. That would be dishonest. It is, in fact, Anarchist art of hacking Bitcoin. Okay, now that we've got Anarchist art of hacking Bitcoin, let's take a look at a couple of other works from the same group. And, you know, of course, these are completely fun commentaries on culture, as that was. And now these are two pieces that are really about privacy. So what's going on over here?
So this piece is called Pirate Cinema, and this has a server operating as a BitTorrent node. And so, you know, BitTorrent is often used for media piracy. So people are stealing their latest Netflix series or you know, HBO series off this. And this looks at the 100 top shared files on BitTorrent. And it's a protocol that's peer-to-peer sharing, so it's very decentralized, and it takes chunks of these files that it sees coming over the network. And so what you're seeing is chunks of all these shows people are watching.
It's a piece of
every
art
night.
that answers the question, who's stealing what? What's popular to steal? And so what we're looking at, coming from BitTorrent, are chunks of shows. And of course, what's great is the way BitTorrent works is there's a popular show, people basically upload it, and then it takes chunks, and it's moving chunks around the network. That's more efficient than moving whole shows. So if you're going to intercept something, what you would see is chunks of shows that people are stealing. And this, by the way, there's a book on this. We can order a book.
There's a book called, what is the book called?
Piracy?
The Pirate Book is
Pirate
what the
Book.
book is. It's just called the Pirate Book.
Yeah.
And it's about a lot of the Disnovation.org projects, and you can order it online.
If you go to disnovation.org, you can actually run the piece we looked at before, the predictive art bot. Just stick it up on a screen, and you can run it. You can buy the book version of this. And Blacklist over here is...
Yeah, Blacklist is a listing of sites that are blocked by popular censorship software that you would run, you know, if you would download, if you had kids and you didn't want them going to certain websites, that sort of thing. You can see the whole list of the domains that are blocked by these virus crash. So, you know, both you see the censorship, but then you also see sort of the back doors through which people try and attack us online in certain cases. VulcanGambleCSN.com. What else we have here? And then it categorizes them. So there's porn, gambling, file hosting sites, all sorts of things in here. So this is an index of all the things that we're getting blocked from.
You know, there's one of the political questions that this whole show raises is, in a world of decentralized systems, we are, of course, taking on centralized systems. A fundamental theme here is the 20th century was big government, big institutions, big companies. Perhaps we're unhappy with that. The populism we're seeing worldwide is a reaction to that. And the optimistic or utopian view of all of this is, if we distribute everything, perhaps we regain control. But the minute this happens, you start asking questions like, who's in charge? Who's a tastemaker? Is this a completely libertarian thing where everyone gets to do what they want? Or is there some commons or agreed upon set of matters? So this piece is about who gets to decide what gets censored. And is, you know, should people make those decisions? So this renders explicit issues about censorship, but sitting right underneath it, this uneasy question of who guards the guards. Okay, so now we've covered three kind of cultural pieces.
Project,
yeah. What shall we move on to next? Should we move on to this central mining rig here?
Sure, let's do that. These are two works by a contemporary artist named Simon Denny, and he was really one of the first artists. You know, he's widely exhibited artist. He was representative of New Zealand in one of the art biennales. I don't remember off the top of my head which year it was. Very recent, 2015. And he was one of the first artists to really take this language of technology and start using it in contemporary art as an aesthetic tool. So this is called Hacking Trust. It's a server rack that's filled with a couple of different types of Bitcoin mining apparatus. There's a commercial miner up top called Antminer from Bitmain, and then here's a DIY mining rig that people might use to when they started their own in the early days of Bitcoin, when everybody was building their own hardware in this sort of DIY manner.
Yeah, so this is when you think of this whole bit of centralized or not, or slick or not. When Bitcoin started, it was, of course,
you can create your own money.
and it was very transgressive. It was open. It was not unlike the early hacking days, right? And then, of course, in a way, the miners got more control. There's a whole question about whether this a protocol whose whole purpose was to be decentralized and not being able to be captured, in fact, has been captured by the miners who have an economic interest in keeping it difficult. Well, here we have the simple kind of earlier approach.
This democracy, libertarian thing to this commercial sort of, you know, now you need such huge data centers to make any money doing this stuff.
And of course, what is this showing us between the early and the current, between the DIY and the more professional? That space in between is the gray area.
The tide of capitalism marching forward, despite our best efforts.
That's right, Barry. Everywhere we look here, we see the gray area. Let's find another one over here. Now, this is great. Now we start getting into art that plays with exactly what are these economic values that are going on when you tokenize things. One of the works that's not here because Primavera took it home with her was Plantoid, which will be up at Burning Man this year. This is a physical, a mechanical thing that looks like a plant, and then online you can feed it and support various characteristics of it, which would then fund another artist to go build another one of those plants. So you actually have a physical thing that is supported through virtual currency that you can work with online. And because it generates and replicates, perhaps it's a form of life. But it's not here.
It's it's a work of art that has the conditions for its reproduction as intrinsic to the work. So there's a smart contract out there, and it has a system for people to pay and then create more of these works. So it self-replicates and evolves.
It's very thoughtful, right? Because it actually brings a number of these concepts about self-replication and incentives and smart contracts, and also, very cleverly, it jumps the physical and the virtual, because it incents human artists, makers, to go make another version of the plant. Okay, that's clever. Here's another one, also about flowers. This one is called Flower Tokens. And what happens here in flower tokens?
Well, this is a piece by a group called Terra Zero, who's dealing a lot with ecologies and how blockchain things and markets can address those issues. Flower tokens is their attempt to create a hybrid physical digital sort of entity. And so what you have here is a rack of flowers growing. This actually exists in Berlin. This is a live feed of these flowers. And each one of these flowers has been put onto the Ethereum network as a token. And so this is a market where you can purchase these flowers. So you can see now in this graphic which ones are available. So here, let's take number 36. You can see the address of the owner, and if I were to go on here, you can see the transaction history for who bought and controls this flower and this token. If you want to, you can go to Berlin and pick this up. It has some statistics on the growth rate of the flower. For example, this one's growing at a paltry 5.65%, but we have a lot of hope for it. And you can see what it was originally bought for, and currently this was bought for, almost a tenth of an ETH, and whoever owns this token selling it for 300. We'll see if it sells for not on it. There's one on here that's listed at 12,000 ETH. I don't think that one's sold yet either.
Tenth of an ETH is what, maybe 50, 60 cents?
Oh, $40, something like that.
But oh, you're right, it's almost a tenth of, it's not 1% of it each, it's 10%. So this actually went for around $40.
$40 for that flower, yeah.
There you go. And it's being sold for about 300 ETH.
Which is, what would that be, $12,000, I guess?
And that potential, between $12,000 and the actual $40 it transacted for, that difficult potential in which we hold questions about this, what do we call that? That's the gray area. It's the gray area.
There we are.
And by the way, you bought one of these, didn't you?
I did.
What did you pay?
I paid about a tenth of an ETH.
And what are you selling it for?
About 300.
So what does that show us? It shows that there's a market for the gray area, a spread.
The most expensive one I'm aware of that sold was for about 2 ETH, which is what, $800,000, something like that. Now I'm not sure the current price.
Okay, it also shows that we live in an era where you can tokenize anything.
It's true. Can you tokenize art?
Well, I mean, this is the sad thing. We went through the entire pop art era in the 60s. They didn't tokenize a damn thing.
They didn't.
So now we have a chance.
But there's an artist over here attempting to answer that question.
Let's go look.
So this piece over here is by an artist named Alex Reben. He's a Berkeley-based artist from a place called Stochastic Labs. Let's look at this one. And so this is a generative work of art. There are these flocking points of color that go around and create this abstract sort of collage. But the interesting thing about this is everyone that comes to the exhibition gets this QR code, which is an Ethereum wallet address. So that's how you store money on these networks. And this unique address also corresponds to, if I can, a unique arrangement for this work of art. So this is, they're random digital arts, but artworks, but the seed values for how these are generated are stored in conjunction with these wallet addresses. So if I have this address and everybody got one that comes in to see the exhibition, I own this work of art because it's stored in Ethereum on the blockchain, and so I own that work. But I also own a unique representation of it. So this is, if I scan this again, you'll see it restart in the same way it did before. If I can get it.
So this actually raises another set of really interesting issues, which is that oftentimes when we think of digital representation of things, they can be copied, and we saw that in the over there with the BitTorrent, and this has been a fundamental issue of digital art or photography, which is you can keep copying it, and then what does that have to say about value? One of the innovations here with cryptoeconomics is you can create a completely unique digital thing, and this is what CryptoKitties did. And CryptoKitties is at once a game, but the point is there are these unique digital things, art perhaps, and this is picking up on the same idea. Here is this generative piece, so it's a computational piece of art, but the particular state, you get to own that, you get to have that, and so this is...
Yeah, I mean, a traditional work of art, let's take the Mona Lisa, the reason that's valuable is because it's unique. There's only one of them. And the question of how to solve that in a digital art space where things are infinitely copyable, how do you ascribe value to that stuff? How can people collect and pay for it? Because otherwise for these digital artists, there's no art economy, there's no resale value. They can't support themselves. They have to do grants to the NEA, and we all know how that's going. And so this is one way to create a unique, not necessarily manufactured, but a unique scarcity to these digital generative artworks. That means this piece that I own, there's none other like it in the world, and I own it.
I mean, this is one of the big innovations that cryptography brings to content, which is you can have a wholly unique, not copyable, not transferable piece whose provenance you understand throughout history and where it goes. So these add a set of attributes to digital art that, well, first of all, can bring it into an economy and then can make it collectible. And so what's interesting, again, is we have a piece of art, you know, when we consider this or CryptoKitties, or even the flower token, we're asking fundamental issues of what's the value in art, and in a way, these are, you know, early warning experiments, or this is kind of what prototyping does, raising the kind of questions that might be very useful to the art world, and certainly culturally shows us what's here on the horizon. That was a great explanation, thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, so moving on. Well, we saw a piece from Berlin earlier.
Here's another one.
So, you know, we've covered these themes of culture, open culture. We've covered some of the economic stuff. As you point out, many of the pieces here are transgressive. They hack, not so much in the sense of bad hacker, but in the sense of picking at a system, exposing things. And so now here we have perhaps the biggest hack of all in today's show.
Yeah, this is a piece called Can You Hear Me? And it's by a couple of artists, Wachter and Ude. And this is really, in terms of what you're saying, they've really identified these sort of leverage points or fissures within these systems or surveillance and control, and are sort of playing with that. So this is a mesh network. It's a public mesh network. You can join it here on your phone if you want. It's live. But the video shows its initial installation in Berlin, and it's a piece about surveillance. The government, the NSA and other governmental agencies in Germany were surveilling certain Wi-Fi frequencies to listen to the communication between people covertly. What these artists did is create a public mesh network on the same frequencies with a sort of chat service, so that anyone that wanted to could talk directly to their surveillors at the NSA.
Okay, so you had GCHQ from UK, you had the federal government of Germany, and you had the US National Security Agency, all surveilling things, spooks, surveilling things you're not supposed to know about. And into that ferment, literally across the street from the seat of the German government, and in this case, on the roof of the Swiss embassy, which is, okay, that's interesting because the Swiss are letting you do it, a mesh network that's transmitting and receiving on the same frequencies. So it's basically speaking into the ears of the surveillors. And then, you know, hello world, hello NSA, and if you look at the presentation that was given on this completely pissed off the surveillance agencies that like sent investigators, but it was legal. And then it spread to other arts organizations, and there was a dialogue between the transgressors and the surveillors.
And who knows who's listening to us right now?
Anonymous is watching. NSA, we are part of your organization. Expect us. We will shut down. One of 15,000 messages sent to the NSA and GCHQ in Berlin. These messages are available. You could tweet them out to anybody who's surveilling you, which could be everybody. All right. Continuing this theme of some of the economics issues of mining, here we have a video game. This is a video game in which, as you start using UI elements of doing things like opening up a mine, you are increasing the efficiency of this piece of software in doing mining.
Yep, this is an artwork called Click Mine. It's by Sarah Friend. I mean, it's a conceptual sort of video game where you're actually mining, you know, for cryptocurrency. And every time I click this, it's mining some ether. You can see sort of the transaction history down here with it communicating to this.
I noticed this is an indicator that says time to mine.
Time to mine. So
is more faster?
You can see, so I'm going to click right now to mine, and you can see that bar start to refill. So it's sort of my efficiency of mining. And so it's sort of, you can see it's slow. It would be sort of tedious to mine a lot of money this way. But what I can do is sort of buy new technology to increase my mining efficiency. So for my money now, I could buy a pan. There's like a shovel and a pan and a sluice. I could buy a kick-ass sluice.
In this game, am I actually using ETH to buy these things?
Yes, you're using ETH to buy these things.
So this is like the real world game. I'm investing, and then I'm going to get a miner, and either I get a return or I don't.
Yep, exactly. And so my work is amplified and enhanced by my technological resources, and then you keep mining and mining and mining and mining, and I've actually never got to the bottom of it. But the hole I'm digging increases.
Can you tell me about the propaganda machine?
I can't. No, if I told you about the propaganda machine,
Can we
it would be a
click on
serious
it?
problem. We can, except I don't have
Enough ETH?
enough money to buy a propaganda machine at this juncture.
So basically, this work came
Maybe
with
if I
a
get
wallet?
a sluice.
Did the work come with a wallet?
The work makes a wallet, and then you can play.
In the time since the work's been up, has it made money, or has more money been spent on tools and it's behind?
I'm not sure.
Can we find
It's
out?
it's art.
It's art.
Peter,
It's art.
Is it?
It's just Grace's question. Is it art? Is it audited? If it's conceptual art, does it need to have a ledger? All right, well, these are all questions which you could not raise probably until this week.
Until this week.
Right. All right. So, as you can see, when you get into the world of decentralization and cryptoeconomics, you start raising all sorts of questions, conceptual questions, as we start looking at incentives,
Path of your life.
economics, exactly. And so this artist has taken board games and re-rendered them with the gameplay and the questions that are kind of being asked in today's world. So this is the game of life. Who did this?
This is Simon Denny, who also did the server rack behind us. This is an overlay on a Game of Life board. If you've ever played the Game of Life, it's really this very narrow path hewn through life's choices. You can decide things, are you going to go to college or not? Are you going to go on a career path? And this takes concepts of cryptocurrency and mining and applies them to that sort of structure, along with a lot of other sort of dystopian and subversive themes. Yeah.
I will now be an oracle for the dystopian and subversive themes. It is the haunted, ideal, decentralized, post-scarcity future. That's at the top. Topping off, ghosts of crypto governance fantasy. And then some of the avenues here. All users are owners. The commons is here. The crypto post-scarcity world is on this game. We are encoded social smart contracts. Also,
Value abstraction without value extraction.
value abstraction without value extraction. And then down here, some of the ways one can move around the game. Become inflated in deep principles of machine language. 2 tokens. Reframe consciousness as a spectrum. Learn the basics of machine to organism ethics. Vote on collective governance structure. That's only 0.05 tokens. Does that mean we don't value governance, or we want everyone to participate?
It's a real question.
It's a gray area. You can understand the drift. Reflective meditation outcomes targets between unequal parties. Unequal parties. All right. Well, we're deep into the conceptual framework now, Barry.
Yes, we are.
Okay, over here, these are actual pictures from performances done by the RIAT Institute for Future Cryptoeconomics. Say more.
So yeah, I mean these are artifacts from some of their performances. This is a group that does many sorts of, some of the Terra Zero members that did flower tokens are a member of this group. You can see this picture was a picture of an installation that sort of used these mining fans to show when, cryptocurrency was being mined or not. They did some pieces based on Ai Weiwei's sunflower seeds that you might know from the Tate Modern exhibition, which was a piece where Ai Weiwei did had a village paint these sunflower seeds from this artwork, and was a commentary on sort of modes of production in China. And there was a big deal where people were taking them out of the Tate Modern, and they had to sort of cordon them off. So this is a whole group. I mean, it behooves people to look more into their work on their site at RIAT, because these are performance works, and these sort of snapshots of them are only keyholes through which we are peering at a larger oeuvre of cryptocurrency-based artistic inquiry.
Did you just say a larger of cryptocurrency-based inquiry? There you go. Is there a URL here, a gray area that people can look at to jump to all this work?
It's at riat.at, riat.at, because they're in Austria.
And does the gray area exhibit have a URL that people can?
The Gray Area exhibit does have a URL. It's available at grayareafestival.io, and there's an exhibition page there that lists all these works and has greater descriptions.
Yeah, you can. I've had a lot of fun navigating off of it and actually downloading some of these pieces. Okay, we'll wrap up, or close to wrapping up here. Cryptographic work, of course, involves all sorts of evolving algorithms for mining and cryptography. And that, in a way, brings us back to some of the early world of software and art, which was generative and which was driven by artists who created algorithms. You know, I think of the work that Casey Reese has done in processing, or Golan Levin's work. And here is work that is actually based on cryptographic algorithms.
Yes, these pieces are called Nested Exchange Series. They're by an artist, Harm van den Dorpel. And these pieces, they have this tree structure, and these pieces exchange information with each other. You can see in this video some of the generation of these works. And as they exchange information, they change graphic elements and behaviors around each piece, and thus generate new works. And so this is a constant dialogue between these sort of two nodes of an information exchange system. And then we have prints of some of the outputs of this system here.
Is this thing running off the web or off of a local processor?
This is running off a local, just a little, almost like an Arduino. It's called Tinkerboard.
Got it. And are these works that we've seen here collectible, downloadable? How do these interact with the real world?
These works are collectible. For Harm's work, I can't really answer that completely, but I know he does exhibit in galleries, and he's, you know, all these people have sort of purchasable, collectible works. I'm not sure if there are digital versions of his output or not, but.
I think we have one more work here, right?
We do.
All right.
This is a piece of reconstructed architecture called the Tetrapylon. It's from a famous archaeological site in Syria called Palmyra. There was a gentleman named Basil Kartabil who started this project back in 2005 to remodel this city. And then he subsequently was jailed by the Syrian government, and later found out that he was executed by the Syrian government a couple of years ago. He was an open source software free culture advocate in Damascus. This project's interesting because this architecture, which was, and this is the Syrian site that ISIS took over and started destroying. The Syrian governments tried to recontrol it because of this national symbolism. But it's like, where is the people and the cultural heritage in all this? And so this piece speaks to how this architectural symbolism is used as a system of control. All of these models, in his prison camp, Basil started this project with a group of friends outside to open source all of these models and make them publicly available so anyone can download them, print them, make new works, create future works, and it's a way to give agency over some of this architectural symbolism back to kind of the world at large and wrest it from the control of those that seek to control it.
We had a piece here last year. I recall someone, I forget, they 3D scanned some valuable.
Yeah, that's the other Nefertiti project. Yeah. Nour al-Bedri and Jan Nikolai Nels, and they took a piece from the Bodhi Museum. There's this Nefertiti head that's been the subject of repatriation discussions where, you know, you say, oh, should the museum have taken it out of Egypt, and the Egyptian government wants it back, and so there's controversy about this colonialism, decolonializing and deaccessioning these assets from museums and repatriating them. And so their project, they went into the museum and clandestinely 3D scanned the object and made the model available so you can 3D print it. So that's another similar work in this genre of reconstructed cultural heritage.
So, if we wrap up here, if we think about some of the themes, there really is this theme about is culture open and who gets to appropriate and use it, right? So we see this here where this contentious national site has been scanned and shared. And we saw this also in the blockchain unique art piece that talked about the fact that you could actually have digital versions of things that were unique and therefore possibly ownable or shareable.
And in this case, it's something that's completely open source and just downloadable versus some of these systems where economic ties are being tried to
Be plugged into.
Plug into these works.
So it's a cultural decision you can make, or an economic decision you can make. We saw the piece that used BitTorrent that was about piracy, and then the question of control of content, which was the blacklist piece, and then this commentary on the kind of runaway creation of culture and memes, which was the predictive art bot. And then of course, there are a whole series of pieces that were playing with these themes of tokenization and almost there's a utopian fetishization going on with blockchain right now, right? It's the new currency. It can solve problems. It can open up and solve society. And you see this, with kind of Silicon Valley utopian culture, which is its own kind of subset of weirdness, out in the world up against a bunch of very real problems, which is, I think, one of the reasons that you see so much humor in this show, people kind of playing with, especially you think of the Game of Life piece, with kind of the buzz phrases of the moment, and yet a set of real issues as we find that in general, things that matter transcend the physical and move to the virtual or the online. This has been a few years of incredible consequentialness of the virtual world, and this show, this theme that you've selected on open and distributed, is really asking the questions of how does that go?
Absolutely. It's really a gray area that we're going to have to explore further. I mean, a lot of these pieces, there's one of our speakers, Sam Hart, we have a conference along with this exhibition that happened last weekend. There's a lot of pessimism about this type of a technology because we had so much optimism around the open web, open internet, the democratization of this content, and we can all kind of see how that turned out. Corporate control, people just filling in boxes and forms in larger platforms, and this sort of platform capitalism. So, there's some pessimism, but there's a lot of talk about these blockchain technologies, these to subvert governmental control, national systems, nation states, this sort of thing. But why will that turn out any different? It's unclear. And so it's not going into this sort of starry-eyed, nobody necessarily thinks that this is going to solve all the, these kinds of things are going to solve all the problems. But as one of our speakers, Sam Hart, said, it's the most viable utopia that we can find right now in terms of subverting some of these things. And so this exhibition has artists directly, sort of poking at that concept and seeing where the opportunities and where the sites of.
And this is a current cultural theme. We at Gray Area had our Gray Area Festival a couple weeks ago, and the Internet Archive just had their Distributive System Festival. Yeah. These same questions were being asked. It is, in San Francisco, a summer of our discontent as we worry about these things. And there is this weariness because you're right. We've gone through waves of decentralization that ended up with more centralization and control, and that's kind of a big theme in both of these conferences. And yet underneath it is this notion that perhaps there's this distributed future that we can create, that we can build systems that aren't capturable and are open and representative. It reminds me actually, of, it reminds me of James Madison in Federalist Number 10. Here in Federalist Number 10, as he was working to build this country, he was thinking, how do I build a system that isn't capturable, that doesn't get taken over by factions? And, you know, he works through 3 branches of government, and then local governments and national governments, and almost algorithmically perfectly works through, I want to set loose a system that won't get captured. And then you go forward to the work that's going on today, and you look at, for example, the original Satoshi, blockchain version of Bitcoin, and that particular mechanism, in fact, can get captured by the miners. And then you look at things like proof of stake in Ethereum, which is another way of actually ascribing value to people who own things. These themes are like, they've just gone on throughout history. And
timeless.
Timeless, and here we are with artists considering them at the gray area. Well, that concludes.
Is it art?
Is it art? And does that even matter?
And does it?
Yeah, so at this moment of great change and great concern, art's doing its job. Are you?